Yes, good evening to all of you, and tiki lugarit, that is welcome in Greenlandic. This program today is a cooperation between the Nordic Culture Point and UPIC, and we talk about university life in Greenland, and today we heard a teacher's perspective. Nordic Culture Point is an institution of the Nordic Council of Ministers which works to support Nordic cooperation within the area of culture and to increase awareness of Nordic culture in Finland and the Nordic region. And UPIC is the Finland-Greenland Friendship Association with the aim to keep up and develop the contacts between Greenland and Finland. And today we have the pleasure to have Maria Ackrén with us. She's on Åland in Mariehamn, and that's why we have the flag of Åland here and the flag of Greenland. And Maria, you are working in the university in Nuuk in Greenland, and you have stayed there for 10 years.
Yes, that's right.
And we are very pleased to have you with us today, this evening. And you are not in Nuuk, you are in Mariehamn, as I told, and you have been member of UPIC, our association, for many, many years. And we are very glad to have one who is living in Greenland also as a member. But now we are going to start, and you have a background, university background, both in Finland and even in Sweden. Can you tell us how did you land in Nuuk in Greenland 10 years ago?
Yes, so I have taken my bachelor's degree at the Mid-Sweden University in Sundsvall. And at that time, I was actually interested in European integration and EU matters. So I was enrolled in a EU studies program at the time. But then my interest a little bit changed. So I then moved back to Finland to take my master's degree. And then also continued at Åbo Akademi University to the PhD level. And my interest then became focused on self-government areas around the world. And that's why Greenland also is an interesting place, and it has been part of my research already during my dissertation. But I was working at Åbo Akademi University first, temporarily. I had only this kind of 1-year contracts. It's very hard in Finland to get a permanent position at the universities. So that's why I was then applying for different positions. And this way I became positioned in Greenland, actually. I got my position there. At Ilisimatusarfik, then at the University of Greenland.
Yes, and before we go deeper in your own field, political science, you have promised to tell some figures about the university in Nuuk, Greenland.
Yes, so if we can get the picture, the fact picture, that would be great. Thank you. So at the university, we have in total numbers about 750 students enrolled in the different programs. The number of new students this year has been 231 that has become enrolled in the different programs. We have about 11 bachelor degrees programs in different areas, and then there are only 3 master programs, and then also 3 PhD programs at the university. It's a very small university, and the number of staff is about 150 approximately. This year, we see that the bachelor degree, those who have been graduating this year, is about 80 persons, and the master degree about 20 persons. And the number of PhD students have increased during the years. We have about 25 at the moment. The organization is kind of divided into 4 different institutes. So we have one institute for teaching. This is the so-called teaching college, where you take a bachelor degree within teaching and pedagogical work. And then we have the Institute of Social Sciences, Economics, and Journalism, where I'm working with different departments. And then there is an institute for health sciences and nursing, it's the so-called nursing school. And then an institute within humanities, language, history, and culture. And underneath each institute, there are then different departments which are then led by a head of department.
And what do you then miss? Which fields do you not have it in your university?
The natural sciences are lacking at the moment. There has been some discussions to implement a bachelor degree within biology, and this has been underway for several years, but it hasn't really been realized yet. But this is something that it's where the university works together with the Natural Resources Institute to try to establish a BA degree also in natural sciences.
Yes, but you don't have a medical school and even not a higher technology education.
No, the medical part, you have to go abroad to take a degree. Usually people go to Denmark or to other Nordic countries. There is a technical engineering program in Sissimut, which is a kind of collaboration between Sissimut and the Danish Technical University in Denmark. So there is an Arctic engineering program, but this is the only kind of technical program that is available at the moment.
Yes, it was interesting that you told that you in all have 750 students, and there is every year such an amount of children. Also, so you have one year class, so to say, in the university. Do you have any ideas how many are studying abroad and mainly then in Denmark?
Unfortunately, I don't have the figures, but there is a huge amount of students going to specifically Denmark, but also to Norway, Iceland, and also US and Canada. So there is a huge part of the students also going abroad, but how many they are, I don't know exactly.
Yes, I know, at least from the medical side, that many students going to Denmark to study to doctors or dentists, they are not coming back to Greenland. Do you have any thoughts about why? Why don't they come back?
Yeah, so this is very typical for small communities. This is also part of the problem for the Åland Islands, for instance, and other small island communities, that people are then going abroad to take their degrees, and then they start families and build up networks and get jobs also in the places where they take their degrees. And so there is this kind of brain drain that we see usually in these smaller communities.
If we then go to your own field, can you please open up for us what it is about?
Yes, so my field is political science, and I'm focusing very much on the different self-government areas, how they function, what kind of structures they have, what kind of degree of autonomy, and the kind of room for maneuver, and especially within international relations, for instance, that they have. So I'm looking at the different competencies, both in the jurisdictional sphere, but also in practical terms, how these policies are also implemented in practice. My ongoing research right now is about the security and foreign policy that Greenland is involved in. I'm trying actually to write a book about this, and hopefully it will be completed in a couple of years. But there is, of course, different areas within political science. So one area is international relations, and then you have political theory as another area, comparative politics, where you compare different nations, and public administration as well is part of this, where you look maybe more at local level, like municipalities and different organizations, or how politics functions in both in practice and in theory.
When you follow the news from Greenland, you realize that there is a big turbulence in the political life. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, so we see a lot of turbulence. There is a lot of circulation of people within the different political parties, but also this kind of fractions within the parties themselves. And then you have some populist politicians who come with very, very different statements. Recently, Pelle Broberg, who is the foreign ministry, has been saying that it's only the Inuit people who will be able to discuss the independence issue, for instance, and not other people within Greenland. So there is this also populist statements that becomes kind of clashes, especially between Denmark and Greenland usually. We have seen this in the recent years, and this is always something that's going on. So we have also seen that there are elections in between the elections periods usually as well happening, that this coalition, those coalitions that has been implemented after the election hasn't held, and therefore there has been these different cleavages coming about. I think this is just the kind of usual politics in Greenland, actually, in a way.
You have followed the political life there for 10 years.
Yes.
In which direction do you think it's going? Is it more or less of the turbulence?
I would say that we will see the turbulence still occurring throughout this election period, and maybe also in the future. The problem I see is that there is a kind of a mutual agreement when it comes to the overall aim with, for instance, independence. I mean, most of the parties are in favor of independence, but how to reach it and when is a complicated issue. And there is divisions also when it comes to the large-scale projects, for instance, within the mining industry and other areas where we see some divisions between the political parties. But the kind of overall goal is quite clear from the standpoint of the majority of the political parties anyway.
Yes, I have now a comment to our audience. If you have questions or comments, you can write them on the discussion part of the streaming. And our Henrik, who is following taking care of our technique here today. He's following if there is coming any questions, so we can try to answer them. Then one thing which is discussed here in Finland at least is the autonomy of the university. Do you have the same discussion in Greenland, or do you have problem? Is there someone, the politicians or some other, who's trying to put limits on what you are doing, or in which way you are presenting your results?
Well, we are working underneath the self-government directly. So I mean, as all the staff are getting the salaries from the self-government. So this is of course a little bit problematic sometimes, but the university itself is quite autonomous. So the politicians are not directly involved in what we are dealing with when it comes to research and such, but they are of course pressuring for new programs and try to also a little bit influence what kind of direction the university should take in order to fulfill some of their wishes. So we do see some pressure also from the political side, but in a sense we are quite autonomous as well, even though we are employed by the self-government.
Yes, if we then go to the languages you use when teaching and when you are dealing with your students, one reason that we make this discussion in English is that you teach in English also in Nuuk. But can you come with comments on that?
Yes, so we at the university we operate with 3 languages. So Danish, Greenlandic, and English are all kind of equal languages that we are using. But of course, in practice, you can say that it is very much Danish dominated because of the staff that we have at the moment, and Danish is then the kind of administrative language as well that is used mainly at the university. But we do have some international scholars as well from Mexico and China and Germany. And so forth. So some of the teachers are then teaching in English as I am doing as well, since my Danish is not so perfect. So that's why I then use English as my language of instruction.
Do you speak Greenlandic?
Very little. I mean, I do understand some expressions and words and so on, but I have also taken some courses in Greenlandic, but I cannot speak. I mean, I cannot have a dialogue in Greenlandic. That would be too difficult for me. But I can a little bit follow what people are talking about and so on in kind of overall matters, but not in detail, of course.
What about the students? Do they have easy to follow your lessons in English?
Yeah, I think that the new generation at least are very well skilled in English, and of course they look they use social media very much. They look at English American TV shows and films and so on. So English is kind of in their daily life. So yeah, they can follow usually very well all the lessons. Of course, there are some divisions also. I mean, there are some students who are less able to speak or understand the English, but we do have some requirements for our programs, at least when they get enrolled, that they should at least master English at a specific level before entering the program. So that is a kind of a hurdle that they need to overcome before being granted a position, a place in our department, at least.
Do you have any comments on the way the students are working? If you compare to students you had here in Finland or that you studied with, is there any differences?
I think the students are kind of universally, I mean, you have those who are very ambitious and those who are lazy and everything in between. So I don't see that there is so much difference, actually. We have, of course, very smaller classes since there are only a few students in each class. So there is maybe sometimes a little bit different dynamics going on in the classroom, but otherwise I would say a student is always a student wherever they are.
You mentioned the Greenlandic Independence. What thoughts do you have about that? Are we going to see it, and if, when do you think it's going to happen?
Yeah, I think the work, what the politicians are doing and the goals they have are very clearly towards independence. But of course, there is a lot of work to be done. And it will take a long time before this ultimate goal is going to be reached. So I would say we are looking at decades before this will happen.
Yes, and what part do you think the university could have in that development?
Yeah, I think that it is important that the youth are taking or getting more educated and that they will get into the universities to take some degrees and become more critical thinkers and be kind of prepared for the future. So I hope that there will. We have seen an increase in the recent years, that there are more and more people enrolled and are also interested to take some degrees also later in life. We see that some people also change their careers during a period of time as well. So we have both young people, but we also have some older students as well. And this mix is good, I think.
And I have now the flag of Åland and the flag of Greenland here. And the political autonomy is very similar. Can you say something about that?
Yeah, so if we look at the Åland Islands, it's very much based on jurisdictional matters, a very complex structure, which of course has its history from the League of Nations and the conflict that was then solved through the League of Nations in the 1920s, and Åland Islands is now celebrating its 100 years of self-government. But what has happened in the Åland case is that I would say it has become a little bit of a standstill, even though there is a new self-government act underway. There are still some competence areas which are underneath the Finnish government and within the Finnish jurisdiction. While the Greenlandic model is based on a delegated model where the Danish government has been delegating a lot of competencies to both Greenland and the Faroe Islands. continuously, and there are a lot of negotiations taking place between the different authorities continuously, and this is a more flexible model in that sense. So it's easier to change and revise the self-government acts and so forth, and therefore Greenland has come a long way in also in international matters, for instance, where Greenland can sign bilateral treaties and negotiate with foreign powers without the influence of Denmark.
I'm glad that you mentioned Faroe Islands. They have the same situation as Greenland, but they have had their own way of ruling since 1948. I am right.
Yes.
And if you compare Faroe Island and Greenland, what do you think about the possibilities for independence?
Yeah, it's a very similar situation. Of course, it also depends on who is in government. And now at the Faroe Islands, we see that it's the unionists who are now ruling the nation. So these are, of course, more pro-Danish than the Republican Party, for instance, which has also been sitting in the government in the past, which are more pro-independence. So it shifts a little bit between the elections as well when it comes to the Faroese case, but they have a very similar structure and competencies, of course, since the Greenlandic model is built on the Faroese example. So it's very, very similar self-government. We see that, and some of them are of course also for independence, but it's more divided in the Faroese case than in the Greenlandic case.
What do you think about the importance of the Nordic cooperations for these islands, Faroe Islands, Greenland and Åland?
It's very important to be part of the Nordic family, and this is something which are very prioritized by the authorities. And of course, they both have all the three Nordic islands have seats in the Nordic Council and the Nordic Council of Ministers, and they take part in all kinds of Nordic cooperation. And this is something which is very much focused in each self-government region. And there is also this West Nordic Council, which is between Faroe Islands, Iceland and Greenland, which is a parliamentarian forum where these three nations then are discussing politically about different things like fisheries and climate change and other matters which are common for these three regions. And this is also something which is very much focused on. But of course, the West Nordic Council is they don't have any decision power. It's only a kind of a political forum where they can give recommendations to the authorities or to the parliaments.
All of us heard the news that President Trump wanted to buy Greenland, and that is something that is going on today also. USA has opened a consulate in Nuuk, and the cooperation with USA between USA and Greenland is developing. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, so the Trumps tried to purchase Greenland is of course something which will never happen, but this idea was very much a populistic thing from the Trump administration, and the Trump himself. But of course, we have seen an enhanced interest also from the US side, where they like to collaborate more with and have a little bit more of a role in the Arctic relations. And this is, of course, since there are also other great powers like Russia and China who are also very interested in different relationships also with Greenland when it comes to the mineral activities and trade and other things. So this new reopening of the consulate has been something which has been going on actually for a longer period of time, and now it has been realized. And what we have seen is that there has been a lot of other interest from the US side to also support within economics and technical spheres when it comes to advisory things within mineral projects, for instance, and also support educational programs within tourism and fishery management and other things. We have a US corner, for instance, at the university, which has been sponsored by the US Embassy in Copenhagen. So this is something which is a kind of an ongoing collaboration, and there are also different agreements which has been signed with the US government between Greenland and the US government regarding this kind of cooperation in different spheres, not only what's related to the military base up in the north, the two-layer base, but also within climate change and economy and other areas.
If we then think about you yourself, if you should have the money and the power, what would you develop in the Greenlandic University?
Well, I would probably develop, what we already are trying to develop is a foreign and security policy institute, which if we would have more money, I would say that this would be something we would develop further and try to link this institute with other similar institutes all over the world to connect with other researchers and collaborate within different research projects and so forth. But this is also something which is only in its initial stages right now, and but of course there are also other fields that would need to be developed, I think, also in other disciplines like natural sciences as well.
Then if we think about you coming from Finland, how have you been met as a Finn at the university and in the society, in your surrounding?
Well, I have been very well received, both at the university and also in the community. So I haven't had any problems. I think it's better to be a Finn than a Dane, if I say so.
Yes, but you have the possibility to communicate in Scandinavian, and do you think there is a big difference if you don't speak Swedish?
Yeah, maybe. It's of course easier to be to communicate in Scandinavian and as a Swedish-speaking person, of course, it's easier to come into the society in that sense.
And we know that there is just a few Finns living in Greenland. You have 4 or 5 or something like that. Do you have any contact with the others?
Not no, unfortunately not. We don't have any contacts like that. I know some that there are some Finns around, but I haven't been contacting them or so. So that is.
Can you say some word about your daily living in Greenland?
Yeah, so
in the university, but in in the society?
Yeah, so I'm dealing with CrossFit. So I'm usually going to the gym several times a week, and this is a kind of a sport that you can become very addicted to, and it is a kind of a second family when you go to this gym and meet all the others. I usually also try to go to different events. There are always some seminars and festivals and other things happening. So there is a lot of things to do in Nuuk.
Yes, I think you have a lot of more of that kind of activities in Nuuk than in the smaller places in Greenland. So where can we find Maria after 10 years? Are you still in Nuuk? What do you think?
It's hard to tell. I mean, I will stay there as long as I think I will contribute. So it's of course very hard to tell where you will end up in the end.
How often do you have possibilities to come to Åland to visit your family?
I usually try to do it twice a year during summertime and then during Christmas. But now I have been here for such a long period over the whole summer. So I think I will just come to the next summer next year.
No, I think, is there something that you want to tell us more, things that we haven't discussed yet?
No, I don't think I have anything that pops up in my mind, but maybe there are some questions from the audience or anything.
I have an iPad here, but I can't see any comments or questions. But now before I say kuyanak, that is thank you in Greenlandic, I will say you that before you turn off, you can scan the QR code with your phone and give your response on how you thought we succeeded today. You can also enter the address you see in the on the screen in your browser, and then I hope that you join us again the 12th of October. And then we have the possibility to hear about Greenlandic university life, but from a student's point of view.
Yeah.
And a very warm kuyanak to
Kuyanak.
Maria for this. Thank you. And
Yeah.
to all of you listening, have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you.